Thanks, Maria. Veterans groups and organizations in East Hampton honored World War II veterans who lost their lives in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Western Mass News reporter Glenn Kittle has the story.
December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, signifies the surprise attack by Japanese forces on the Pearl Harbor naval base that pulled the United States into World War II. Post commander of the South Hadley American Legion, Brian Willett, tells Western Mass News, veterans groups and local leaders in East Hampton gathered at the Pearl Harbor Veterans Memorial Bridge to honor those who died that day.
This is one of our most sacred days. This is right up there Memorial Day or any other day, especially to remember our fallen.
Event organizers say the theme for Sunday's wreath laying was the everlasting legacy. Director of Veterans Services Michael Slater says in honor of the theme, veterans groups invited youth groups to join in on the ceremony.
It's great to see that mix of the younger and the older generation. If we don't educate our youth on the importance of ceremonies like this and remembering those great tragedies, I think we're doing a disjustice to them and to the people who were lost that day. So it's extremely important that we continue to grow these ceremonies to include that younger generation and educate them on that sacrifice.
Willett hopes telling the story of the Pearl Harbor attack will help future generations from having history repeat itself.
We can never forget what happened. We can never forget the lives lost. And as mentioned in President Roosevelt's speech that very next day, that we would never let this happen again. And the only way you can prevent that is to let people know what happened, the effects that occurred.
Reporting in East Hampton, Glenn Kittle, Western Mass News.